is transforming every day. I mean, we've had these conversations before. We've talked about children and the internet, privacy, and the internet. We talked about this last year, but today we are changing direction to spotlight how kids, adolescents this time, teenagers, converse, how they use digital tools, social media platforms, even AI, how they use this to interact, to communicate. It's very important for us to talk about this so that we know how to handle this important issue of internet safety, because this has to do with their future. Young people might be, interacting now, and it might be fun. It might be fun for them, but there are consequences for whatever we do, because we are always leaving a digital footprint in whatever we do with the internet. So we need to understand how to address this with them and how to guide them through safe internet practices and how to guide them in their internet conversation. So we have a guest that we're very familiar with by now, which is Miss Ekene. Thank you so much for coming. I'm not going to say too much because I want to hand over to you. I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. I remember the last time you were here, you didn't get to go through everything. So I want to avoid that by just letting you start off early. So you are so welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. And the digital floor is yours. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted. No, it's still muted. You're not. Let me.
Okay. I think you'll be able to hear me now. Yeah, as always, we have issues with technology, but we fight through. Thank you so much for having me once again, Tema, and thank you, Pastor D, for inviting me, becoming one of your members. And I always enjoy coming on because there is always so much to talk about.
Thank God you're not charging us.
Well, we have to talk about that later. It's getting expensive now. But you're my favorite church, so I always like to at least assist, because the important thing is not the money. It's the fact that information needs to be got out to our people and to our children, and so to improve life for everyone. I'd like to just say hello to everyone on board. Thank you once again for being here. And just to say, as a way of starting this, that parenting is no easier now, and it's also no harder now than it has ever been. I don't know if anyone would attest to that, but that's what I believe. It's the same as it has always been, because the gap between parents and children has always remained the same. The only, each generation of parents would, if you ask them, say that they are having difficulty in talking to their children, understanding their children, knowing, what the latest dance is and why they're dancing like that. Why do they have to have their trousers halfway down? All these things parents don't understand. And when I was growing up, the same thing applied to me. But in today's world, we live in a world that moves faster than any other generation. And I think it's basically because of the access to information in the way we're getting information. It seemed like when I was much younger, things could be hidden from me and all of my friends. And we had permission to hide them, whereas now it's like everything is out there. Go get it. There's no filter. There's no editing. As soon as a piece of information comes out, everybody's rushing to see if they can be the first one to put it on the net so that everybody could see it. But in those earlier days, they knew that, you know what, you don't put this out because it could cause a riot over in that corner. You don't put that into the hands of these people because they may use it in the wrong way because they don't understand it. The way in which our young people speak, connect, and express themselves, especially online, has evolved constantly. My goal tonight is to offer you, hopefully a clear understanding of their words and also practical tools to strengthen your connection with your children and protect them and empower them without fear. And that's a very important one for us parents as Christian parents. It's really to teach discernment, not fear. And to also to build trust via conversation, honest conversation with our children, and hopefully guide them through each of the stages that they need to go through in order to grow up strong and with wisdom. So let's see if we can try and bridge that gap and leave here better equipped to guide the next generation with wisdom, compassion, and strength. I had wanted to just put up, am I able to share?
Yeah.
I can?
Yeah, you have hosting rights. You can share.
Okay, let me see if I can share. I won't share it for too long, but let's see. Okay. Let's see if this is going to work. All right. So we're going to look at child internet. And when I say child, I'm talking adolescents as well here, because it applies to them all, I think, very equally, because they're beginning to learn the language also. Just a quick one to say about, not sure what that was. The organization Africa that I work with, not sure. We're here to promote the well-being of Black and ethnic minority children. We were set up since 2001 to advocate for the protection of Black and ethnic children in the UK. And we have offices in London and Manchester. So what I'm going to look at today is digital versus pre-digital parenting. Does anyone know what has changed? Are people able to talk to me? Or maybe it will be you, Tamar, and
yeah, people
Pastor...
are able to talk. They can talk. They can raise their.
We'll do this Okay, fantastic. Very, very quickly, before number 2 comes up. Digital versus pre-digital parenting. What has changed? Just 1 or 2 points, anybody. What has changed? So really, pre-digital would be analog, wouldn't it? You know, what's happened? What's happened to the way in which our children are brought up, the lives that they live? Just 1 point so that we can move on to the next one. Thank you, Jane.
I feel that...
Sorry, go ahead. I saw Jane's face come up and I thought she was about to speak. Go ahead. Anybody, whose voice is that?
I was going to say, I'm Susie. I was going to say that our children are more exposed to, before we had more control over what they were exposed to. Yeah. But now we're in a digital age. They are exposed to the wider world in the way that they weren't before.
Yes, I would agree with that, but to a certain extent, you're still in control. And I think that is something that I'm finding that parents are, I don't know whether I could say leaving the responsibility or kind of saying, I have no control now. The digital people, they've taken over. What is that? I'm asking, what is that? Because that phone, that laptop, who bought it? Who put it in the house? Who gave it to the child? So how is it that they are the ones that control and not you? If you were to want to give them a car, would you not give them instructions? Would you not come to some agreement as to how it was going to be used? So has it really changed? You're still the parent.
You are still the parent, and you can limit what they are exposed to. And when they're within the home, you can monitor and control. But what about when they're outside of the home?
Then that would be a matter of how you have that discussion with them, how you build trust with them, how you give them the why to the things that you're saying. Yeah, I'm just throwing these things out there. I'm not saying it's the correct answer or the best answer, but sometimes as parents, and I'm not saying you, as parents, we don't, always think it through. But I'm putting things in each of your minds, I hope, that will make you just say, hold on a minute, maybe that's true. Maybe I could have done this differently, or I could have, shut that door. Nothing says that they have to have this and now, even if school says so. Or there's a time that you put some boundaries on it. You get me? And you have a discussion. Okay, what's the impact of technology on child development and childhood experiences? Anyone?
I think there's the sense with children that they can get away with more. Before, if you, I mean, when I was a child, I grew up in Africa. I grew up in Kenya. We didn't have any of this connectivity. My parents knew where I was, who I was with, everything at any time, every time. You couldn't just, if you wanted to write a letter, maybe if you had a pen pal, that is the farthest or the quickest communication to somebody in the unknown that you would have, Whereas today, with a phone, the children almost, in some cases, they're getting ahead of their parents with knowing the technology. So yes, you could tell your child, I will control from this time to this time, you dare not use the phone. But at the same time, you don't want your child to be left behind by technology, so you still want to expose them. So I think the thing is how we communicate, exactly what you've just said. You said it's how we communicate. So instead of telling the child, do not use you only can use these websites. And I remember when I got my first internet connectivity, there's a setting you can put on it that is child friendly. But when I put that, it blocked my child from so many websites. She couldn't even do her homework. So eventually I just removed it because she kept coming to me, oh, can you unblock this? And eventually I said, you know what, I will do away with this. So I removed it. And then I started talking to her about the dangers. Basically, you just have to communicate, possibly more than our own parents communicated with us. And I had to tell her, I don't want you to go into some sites. Some sites are not very nice. And I, told her you might find children being, bad things being done to them, or even people, bad things being, the conversation had to be had.
Yes, exactly. And that is where I was saying earlier on, giving your child the why.
Yeah.
Because if they understand why they should not do something or go into a particular area, that way they will have that ability to see what you can see, what they wouldn't have seen if you hadn't told them. In addition, they're prepared for it. In addition, they know where to come back to if something went wrong or goes wrong. And it's you creating what I've always said each time I've come here, creating that safe space of communication. So we're coming back to that thing, communication, information that empowers them to be able to live the life that you want them to. And with where you're all coming from your Christian belief and background, that also has a play in it. And I think when a child knows that you're trusting them, that also impacts on the way that they would behave. Let me move on. There's a lot to talk about. What's the appropriate age to introduce a mobile device? What ages have you each introduced a mobile device to your children?
When they needed it.
And what age was that for you?
I think.
When you say when they needed it, are you referring to school?
Yeah. So when they had after school classes, and I knew I couldn't necessarily pick them up, I would, I'm a single mom, so sometimes I'd be away on meetings and I just couldn't get away. So I needed to be able to tell them and tell the school that I will send X to pick you up. I can't do it myself. And also a few times they would have to say walk from school to a certain activity. I wanted to be able to communicate with them in between. So it's at that stage that I said they need phones.
Yeah, but then hopefully you got them a phone that was appropriate for that activity.
They weren't that smart. Yeah, it didn't have some of the things that the phones have these days. Yeah.
No, but
the more basic phone.
Just to interject though, Jane. Yeah. When Jane was at the level that some of us are just getting into, the word was very sane. It was the days when Nokia, that Nokia is the big one like this. So there's no internet,
Exactly. It was different. Yeah. It was literally just for calls and texts.
Some of the models that we have now with the internet, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying that.
No, I mean it is so true. We've gone through quite a few iterations of the telephone, and as parents, we need to make that constant adjustment each step of the way. Let me just give you some stats because it always kind of looks good to know what's happening out and have a feel. Over 90% of children aged 8 to 17 in the UK access the internet regularly. That's according to Ofcom. 19% of children aged 10 to 15 years old exchange messages with someone online who they have never met before in the last year. That's from the NSPCC. Now, that is quite a figure. I mean, to a certain extent, we will communicate with people we don't know online. But for children, is that safe, is the question. Who are they talking to? Is it that the person is calling them or they're calling the person? What access are they getting? And we're going to look at how that happens, that particular figure. Over 9,000 child sex abuse offences involved an online element in 22-23. Take those figures on. We will come to more discussions as we go along. Platforms. Of course, there are various platforms. We have what we would call the social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram. I think this is Snapchat and Facebook. Even I sometimes forget what they are. Then you have, in another category, games, Xbox, PS, whatever, and the rest of it there. And then you have the live streaming, Netflix, Twitch, YouTube, and others that you may also be aware of. I don't know if I've gone through all of those. Yeah. So now, key online risks for children, which is really what we're looking at here. You have cyberbullying that can take place, which is basically your child being harassed via social media, gaming, and messaging apps. Because it's happening on the left, cyberbullying. They now have also online predators who groom our children, online chat platforms where people go there to play games and the predators can reach them because they will come on board as though they too are children, and they are not. Then we have inappropriate content, exposure to violent, sexual, or harmful material. And a lot of our children are facing that as well. With the cyberbullying as well, that can also take the place of sexual abuse as well, because sometimes the children are harassed by other children who will take inappropriate pictures of them because of the bullying that is physical, and then it goes online. So please be aware of that. We will talk about the impact in a moment, but I'm just sort of laying out the various issues that our children are dealing with today, which you may or may not be aware of. Then we have the data privacy issues. Children unknowingly share personal information, and this is one of the first things that every parent should teach their child about how they share information. Because the way in which they share information, they may not even realize that they're doing so, or even that the computers or telephones are not locked in certain ways, so that maybe where they are positioned when they're talking is not visible. I mean, there was a game. It was like a Pokemon game that happened to, I don't know if they still do it, but basically it involved the child leaving their house to go to a certain spot, and then from there they will be directed to another one. And it seemed like a lot of fun, but it was an open gateway for online predators to actually capture your children. And people allowed their children to run around the place playing these games, thinking it was a safe thing to do, because the assumption was the world was a safe place. You can trust everybody. Oh, I can see them. But seeing them and what's actually happening via the net and their access were two different things. Addiction and mental health. Screen time and online validation pressure. A lot of children, as a result of too much time on the internet, are becoming addicted, like parents. Can I just put that in? A lot of parents are also addicted. They don't have control. And I always say to people that our children mirror us. Every time that I phone a friend of mine and she's on the phone, her child will come and is disruptive in front of her, or stops eating the food she was trying to feed her with a few moments ago. And I came to realize that the reason was because the parents' attention was diverted to the phone, and the child wanted attention. Been at school all day, hadn't seen the parent now comes home, puts food in front of them, and then goes to the phone, and that's it. So these are kind of things that we don't take on board, but it's very important, and it leads to the child feeling isolated, maybe not loved, no attention for it, and just basically, mental health issues can arise from all kinds of things, but the addiction from constantly using phone. I mean, when I was growing up, and probably in the time of Jane too, we were put in front of the television. That was where we sat. Once our parents didn't know what to do with us, or we were saying, "Oh, mommy, I'm bored," they were put in front of the TV. Now what happens is you get given the phone. And so what are we saying? That we have nothing to communicate with our children. In actual fact, if I look back clearly, my parents didn't talk to me. They gave me instructions: go and get this, go and get that. I was the gopher, as they call it here. And that's what I did. I was an unpaid, little sender. Go get, go bring, go stretch. Have you done your homework? The conversation was very, very simple. They didn't feel that they could communicate, although in myself, I felt I could say much more than that, or talk much more than that. And as you can see, from the many times you've called me here, that was my super skill. So I'm walking in it now. Okay, so have you ever had to step in and help a child with an online issue? And what was the situation? Anyone?
Yeah, so I can jump in here, and can we go back to the slide we just left? The
Yeah, sure.
okay. So cyberbullying. I have an experience with kids on cyberbullying, inappropriate content, and I think data privacy issues. But for cyberbullying, 2 years ago, I was tutoring an American girl. She was 8 at the time, and she loved to play Roblox. She was always asking me, "Do you play Roblox? We could play Roblox together. Can we do?" So she was just asking me, right? And I assumed that she was asking every adult in her life if they played Roblox, and they should, join her on Roblox. But I'm not a gamer. I don't play games. I wasn't interested, so I kept on, "Oh, Val, I cannot play Roblox. I don't understand anything about these games and all of that." So one day she came into the class and she was very disruptive in the class, and I just knew that she was having a bad day. So after much probing, she told me that she was being cyberbullied, that some people were being racist, they were using racial slurs uh,
Mm-hmm.
in that game. And I asked her to share the game. So she, got on the platform and she shared her screen, and she was just showing the landscape of the game and how they come in their character forms and
Yeah.
what they share in the comment section and all of that. So I told her to tell her mom because this was an issue of trust. I didn't know. I could have reached out to her mom because I had access to her parents, but I didn't want to tell them directly because it would affect my relationship with her. Uh, I wanted her to be able to come to me anytime to tell me things. So she said, "Oh, I'm not going to tell my mom because she will stop me from playing the game." So we kept going back and forth. This went on for 3 weeks. She was scared of telling her mom. At the end, I was able to convince her to talk to her mom about it, and her mom put some restrictions. She plays the game, but I think there was an adult monitoring how
Yeah.
well she was playing the game. Then for inappropriate content, I just while you were sharing the slide, I just remembered something. Last year, I was home for the summer, and I spent my entire summer with my niece. So we're watching cartoons together on YouTube and stuff. And one thing I observed was the favorite cartoons that she loved to play, they had fan fiction for these cartoons. I mean, they have the original cartoons from the Cartoon Network, but there were other fans creating this their own variations of these characters in their own way. But some
Yes.
of these recreations were sexualized.
Right.
So that's a
Right.
favorite cartoon this child loves to watch, and then someone recreates that cartoon, and they're using the same images. So the child just gets on YouTube because they don't have the
That's
intelligence
exactly.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So they just
Exactly.
get on YouTube, and she's going through it because they're restless. They're always flipping, flipping, flipping. So she just sees something, and she clicks on it. And it looks like what she's used to watching, but it's not. It's a sexualized content of the same cartoon. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you shared that. Thank you, Tamar, because basically what you have just hit on is the way in which predators are recreating things. Because a child is used to seeing, Cinderella. This Cinderella is totally different now. I mean, even those Xbox things or roadblocks, I'm actually, from what I've read and looked at, the roadblocks games are dangerous. Some of these games as well, where you go into private rooms, even if it's not you physically as the person, you're going there mentally, you're creating new environments. It's all part of that grooming thing of getting that child used to the environment, which maybe the predator hopes to bring that child into. And because they've seen it on screen, they feel, hey, I've done this before. So there's no reservation, there's no inhibition. And a lot of these things are all geared at lowering the inhibition, lowering the moral positioning of your child, and almost entrapment, I would say. Because if you've done something that in a play form, the step up to do it in real form is no different because the perpetrator can say, oh, yeah, but we did that last week. Do you remember? And of course, the child simplistically says, yes. And although they may not feel comfortable to turn it from a toy game to a physical reality game, they take the step because they're assured by the adult that it's okay and that it's our secret. But these are the ways in which things can just lead from one step to another step, that sometimes you might say, for example, you find out that your child has been involved. You're like, how could you do this? What is wrong with you? But it's not what is wrong with you. It's, have you seen the steps that led there? Your child that you spoke to initially would never have done that. But if they've been on these internet and those kind of things, their whole view has been chiseled away because you haven't been watching, or you haven't been observing, or you haven't had those conversations. And I have later on some conversation starters so that you can actually, involve your child. Don't assume that they know. You can't, in fact, you shouldn't ever assume just because your child can manipulate a computer or a telephone that automatically that means that they're okay. Oh, well, they know it's better than me. No, they don't. There are certain things that they will not know better than you. They will not know how to assess another human being. They know how to trust you, and you're just like another adult, and they will trust that adult too. So please, don't make those kind of assumptions. Thank you for your example. We've just had that. So let's have a look at some cases that have arisen, just to show you the things that we need to really be concerned about. The first case that we're going to look at, I know the writing may be a bit tiny. It was the tragic case of Molly Russell in 2017. She was a 14-year-old who died by suicide after exposure to harmful self-harming content on Instagram. Molly's parents might not have actively monitored her social media activity. She had engaged with over 2,000 pieces of self-harming content in the months leading to her death, which suggests that there was little intervention or discussion about what she was consuming online. But do you see what I was saying earlier on about the chipping away until finally she took that step herself? 2,000 pieces of self-harm. That's a lot. That's a lot of time as well. That's a lot of consumption. Molly showed signs of distress, but it seems that these weren't fully recognized or connected onto her online activity. Many teenagers hide their struggles, and sometimes parents don't realize the severity of their child's emotional state until it's too late. Would you believe that some parents are protected by their children?
Just say that again.
I said, do you know that some parents are protected by their children?
Protected by their children?
Yeah.
Protected from what?
From, this sentence I just read here, where she didn't feel that she could talk to her parents. And I'm putting it down to her protecting her parents. It sounds like a very strange thing, doesn't it, Jane? But some parents, because at times your children know you better than you know yourself, or know you better than what you think you're conveying. Yeah. If you're, say, in a household that there is domestic violence, and the child is also going through something, he'll say, I can't tell my mom, she's really not going to feel okay about it. Tamar, you just told me about a girl who felt she couldn't tell her mom because her mom would be worried. But yes, she's going through something that needs to be dealt with. But no, I don't want to worry my mom. She'll get annoyed. You know what I mean? So I'm going to put it down that they're protecting you from a situation, having to deal with it. If I put it like that, which it sounds ridiculous, maybe, people might just say, what's going on here? I'm the parent. And it's true. So what are the lessons to be learnt in this situation? Stay informed about the dangers of social media. So you need to understand social media. You need to know about the trends. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The things that are trending, the things that are happening, including how algorithms push content that can reinforce harmful thoughts. And this thing about algorithms, would you, I never knew what they were. But it was happening to me in the sense that, today I've looked up, tablets on headaches, which is the best one. And then for the next how many weeks, I'm getting all kinds of tablets. And I was being quite playful about it. And I was saying, oh, my goodness, it's as if this thing knows what I want. And I was just, scrolling. And then after a point, I felt, it's enough now. I don't need any more of this. But I didn't realize, and people say, oh yeah, it's the algorithm, but I never knew what algorithm was until I started to look into it. And I realized that, that's what it is. It's almost like, somebody forecasting or going ahead of you, feeding you with what you have asked for. And this is why, for those of you who are parents, you should have some sort of system on your children's phones so that you can actually see what are they looking at, or switch off certain types of messages that would come through, so that they don't see it and get influenced. Because in my day, we would be looking for people to inspire us. Now we're looking for people to influence us. The key lesson: stay informed about the dangers of social media, including the algorithms as they push out harmful information, and be alert to changes in mood, behavior, sleep pattern, and social interactions of your children. Sudden withdrawal or secretive behavior around phone use can be a red flag. So there you go. Those are the kind of things that you should be looking out for in your children. Sleep patterns have changed. But you see, if you're not attentive to your child, if you don't know what they are going through, or you don't see them, because as soon as they come into the house, they go straight to their room, they come down, they take their food, and they go straight to their room, and you're not stopping it, and you're not getting involved in that. Why is that happening? Why are we not sitting at the table anymore? I know people sit on trays now, or use trays and sit in front of the TV. Something has to change, because you need to be able to see your child. They're not answering you with their back. They're talking to you. You're making eye contact. These things that we're constantly hearing that our children don't do anymore. Let's have a look at case 2, the tragic case of a young boy who was sexually abused after being groomed through online gaming. A 12-year-old boy fell under the 24-hour control of a 23-year-old pervert who met him out playing football before using contact via Xbox and PlayStation to groom him in his own bedroom. The predator took over the boy's life, grooming him, being in constant contact online, buying him Xbox games, manipulating him, and segregating him from his friends and family to gain total control. So when you see your child suddenly becoming a loner, not as free to go out and do the kind of things he used to, you need to be able to see that change. Otherwise, you won't even know anything's happening. You need to take a second look at your children. If you're uneasy about something, investigate it. Ask the appropriate questions, not in a way that attacks the child, but just, brings them out in love, with love. He actually started meeting him straight from school. So therefore, he was trying to really kind of cage him in. Nobody else could get access. And would take him to local playfields where he would sexually assault him. And of course, once a child has been dealt with even once like that, he then becomes ashamed. He then becomes limited in the way that he can do things. He doesn't want to tell because it's not the nicest thing to tell. It's not what he wanted to do necessarily. So the lessons to learn here, parents must not have been aware of the communication between the communication available on PlayStation and Xbox. I think, Tamar, when you were looking at that Xbox, you saw the chat that was going down the side. And that is the way they access, because you're having your conversation and you're playing your game at the same time. And so it all seems very innocent, and you don't see each other. Only the predator knows that you are probably a child because of the way you're answering and so on. I mean, it's like county lines. They do the same grooming thing where they're buying the child things. And this is where, in my day, if you brought so much as a pencil back home to the house and your mother or father saw it, they would say, "Whose pencil is this? Whose pencil?" And you immediately had to answer as to whose pencil it was. And if it was not yours, because she would know, "I didn't buy you this pencil. So where did this pencil come from?" And so her reaction would be, you know, that thing where they would say, "Before I close and open my eyes, that pencil must be back in wherever, to whoever." And of course, if it was nighttime by then, "I don't want to see this pencil in my house tomorrow morning or tomorrow when I get back." It was that kind of reaction. And that was a necessary reaction. It sounds funny now, but you see, what you're actually showing by that, for example, if I extend that thought and say, when somebody buys a pair of shoes or something or a game and gives it to your son or your daughter and you didn't do it, that saying to them, "Take it back," tells the person outside that, you know what, there's somebody monitoring. There's somebody, also in this child's face. So you can't just jerk this child around anyhow because I'm right here. So your parent may not yet be aware of what's happening, but they will know. It sends a clear message. And also to the child that no, you can't. And you explain why. There's no such thing as a free lunch, so to speak. So parents really need to be aware of what's happening. Many parents focus on gaming content, but they don't look at that is the violence of the game, if it is a good thing for their child. But they overlook the social networking aspect of the multiplayer game. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who had a son, and he was always very happy because his son was in the house. He knew where his son was. And I said to him, "No, you don't. Your son may physically be in that house, but do you know who he's playing with on those games? Do you know who he's chatting with?" He said, "Oh, yes, it's just his friends." I said, "Have you met them?" In my day, my parents would, if you suddenly produced a new friend or you started talking about Jamie all the time, or Jamie this, Jamie that. This Jamie, who is Jamie? What's his last name? Which village is he from? Who's his mother? What do they do? Those were the questions. So, if you didn't want to face all that, you didn't collect Jamie as a friend. You know what I mean? So this was the kind of things that our parents don't do now, because we're into this thing of, oh, give our child privacy. What kind of privacy do you need before you're a certain age? I need to know everything to protect you from what you don't know. Our fourth case here, 4 British teenagers who died in 2022 while attempting the blackout challenge. Did anyone hear about this blackout challenge? Does anyone know what it is? Not one person.
Oh, it's where you choke somebody and then see how long they can hold their breath or something.
It's where you choke yourself.
Oh, it was you choke yourself. I heard about choking. I didn't.
Yeah, you're right. It is that. It's about choking. I mean, basically, these 4 teenagers, a viral trend that encouraged individuals to intentionally choke themselves to achieve a brief euphoric state. So by tying something around their neck Yes, of course, you kind of black out, or you kind of almost faint, and there's a lightening of your head at that point. Not that I've tried it, but
You've been told.
because of course you're cutting off blood supply, you're cutting off your neck, and I mean some people use this kind of behavior in MS, sadomasochism and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm old enough now to know about these things and hear about them, but that's what was happening with these children. So the fact that the kids between the age of 12 and 14 had taken part in the challenge separately after stumbling on it on TikTok, once again, they could have stumbled on one and then boom, things were being sent to them because of the algorithm. They would have been tempted, oh, they came back. They didn't. Do you understand? You know, this one did it and it was all right. This one did it and it was all right. But it didn't work for everybody, because there was another chap I remember who ended up in the children's hospital, and then he was on life support. And then the parents, I think, actually went to court to decide whether they should take him off or not. You see? So it's quite lethal. So unrestricted social media access. Consider delaying social media access for young children, setting time limits, enabling TikTok family pairing features to restrict what they can do. Children can be easily influenced by social media, especially if they see many others practicing in a trend. They may not have understood the irreversible danger of the blackout challenge. And that's why they ended up as they were. Many parents do not stay updated on viral social media challenges, some of which can be extremely harmful. I mean, I'm not up to date with every single one, but there was also one I saw where two people would stand either side of the person that they were going to, I would call it, they were going to trick.
Yeah.
So that person would be in the middle, they would be on each side. And then what would they would, the two who were on the either side know what they had to do, but the middle one didn't. So they would jump. And of course, the middle one would also jump, but before he could land, they would kick his feet from underneath him. So can you imagine, you jump in the air, before you've landed, they've kicked the feet from underneath you, and what happens to you? You have no feet to land on, you'll fall, or you'll fall backwards and probably smash your head on the hard ground. Because they wouldn't think to try and catch you. And it's supposed to be funny. By the time somebody has broken their head on a ground, say in the playground, that is no longer a funny game. Yeah, but these are the kind of things. I mean, I remember there was a challenge which seemed less harmful, but it depends on your constitution. And this was where they used to fill an ice bucket with ice and water. Do you remember that one?
The ice bucket.
Yeah, the ice bucket challenge. And then they would just tip it over you when you least expect it. And you see, this was not helped by the fact that personalities got involved. Even Oprah, I think, did this challenge. So many very, very big people did this challenge. And so it starts to look in the eyes of children that, oh, you know, if they can do it, and these are their influencers, aren't they? These are the people influencing, because I can't see that somebody who's pouring an ice bucket over them is inspiring me. So they're influencing me, which is a more negative view for me looking at it. Okay. So now, let's have a look at the case 4. Adolescent is a 2025 British crime drama television series that centers on a fictional 13-year-old schoolboy named Jamie Miller. who is arrested for the murder of a girl in school. Just wondered, has anyone seen any of these programs?
I've seen it on, I think it's on Netflix, or is it on?
Yes, it is on Netflix.
Yeah, I've passed it, I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that people try and see at least one or two of them, just to have that view of what goes on in the legal system here, in schools and so on. It's quite a bit of an eye opener. I've seen one or two excerpts of it, but I intend to follow up and see more. I'd have to binge it a bit in order to get through it all. So the facts. Despite being in a home with loving parents, please take note of this. Receiving an education and being a smart kid, Jamie is struggling. Like so many boys, literally boys, he has been methodically transformed through a toxic ecosystem that most parents fail to comprehend. Yeah. Loving family, everybody cares about him. It's that ideal family, and yet he is struggling, because I think if I take my own experience growing up in an African home, there are certain things you didn't talk about. We didn't communicate. We didn't talk about feelings. I feel I'm angry. You don't dare. Your parents could do something to you, and of course, naturally, you might be angry. Why did they do that? That's not fair. You didn't even listen to me. You didn't, and you start to put barriers between you and your child. And I'm saying to you all, take a second look and talk. Find out how your children feel about things. You might say, all this feely thing. But it is important, because they take that back and go somewhere else with it, to somebody who will listen to them. Or they may not even find anyone to talk to. And this is where the depression, the mental health, the feeling lost, the sleeplessness, and all these other things that we've mentioned come into play. And then anger steps in, and then maybe it provokes them, grooms them into a certain activity, because it's a way of getting back. In one of the sessions I saw, the knife that was supposed to be used by him was not even his knife. A friend brought it and gave it to him, and felt no way about it. Didn't feel that they felt any responsibility to the whole thing. Okay, moving on. And then it's understanding, when it's talking about the toxic ecosystem, it's also a case of understanding, what are the children of today thinking of, hearing about? A lot of them are hearing about Tate and his view about the relationships between men and women, who the men have got to be tough, the women have got to be, submissive or whatever. What does that mean in the eyes of a 13-year-old child, 14-year-old child? We talk about submission in the Bible, but what does that mean even for us who are older? Does that apply to a child? How does the child view it? Do you see? So these kind of things are big issues that the child doesn't understand or is not processing well. Children's brains are not well formed till they're almost 23, 25 in some cases. So at just 13, when he should be discovering his world through play and friendships, Jamie is instead trying to live up to and is being measured against a poisonous standard of masculinity propagated through social media. So that Tate view, and I guess most of you have heard of Tate, is the view of that this little boy is being measured against. And of course, maybe he's not that way inclined. That doesn't make him a lesser person, but to him and to the world view of the minority of children there, he's being pressured and inadvertently groomed into a position. So Jamie was mocked for being an incel, an involuntary celibate. Yeah? Can you imagine that at the age of 13, he's expected to have already had sex? Who thinks like that? Do you understand? Who thinks like that and puts that pressure on a child who may not be yet developed and should not be blamed for not being developed? He's not meant to be developed yet. It will happen, but not now. This reveals how our boys are being thrust into an adult sexual frameworks before they even navigated puberty. So Jamie, cardinal sin is that he is a virgin at 13. Can you imagine that? And as a result, he's been bullied for that at school inadvertently, the cyberbullying, everything. And then really he's been pushed into a position where he's expected to, in a sense, prove his manhood at 13. When maybe he's not even mentally up there yet and doesn't understand the world, but he's supposed to have understood the responsibilities of sex. What kind of world is that? But this is your cyber world. This is what's going on out there, if any of you are not aware. And there's probably more, which I haven't yet discovered. But this is what we're talking about today. The series highlights how teenagers interact in the digital space because they're using the internet to do it. And even as we're talking about this, these are exceptions to the rule. But if this is your child, there's nothing exceptional here. You've got to have done something about it beforehand, or at least be mindful of it. The series highlights how teenagers interact. Yes. And it also shows how often parents misunderstand or don't even understand, because you're coming from a different warp system, a different planet, and you now interact with these new nuclear kids, as we call them back home. They're digital kids. What have we done? What are we doing? How are we facing this situation now? And so these are the things that we're having to contend with through the use of the internet. The whole thing also is building a new language. The Netflix show, the children there are fluent in this online language. So basically, online communication it's full of slangs, it's full of emojis, memes, and codes. And of course, many adults don't understand. And I and I think this was highlighted in a very silly way. If you remember back, I don't know, is it Cameron? So long ago now, so many prime ministers since then, but I think it was Cameron, and they showed either an email or a text that he had sent, and he had put LOL at the bottom. I don't know whether to him it meant laugh out loud, but also I think the press turned it into lots of love. And it's like, how can a prime minister or something be, sending out something in that way? But do you see, I mean, I even struggle sometimes to know what certain, what do they call it? Emojis. Yeah, and the acronyms too, but the emojis mean. Yeah. You have an emoji. In fact, there's an emoji that you will all know, and it looks like this. Yes?
Yeah.
It's like a prayer. Yeah. And a lot of us use it as a prayer, and we also use it as kind of like saying thank you. Yeah. Mm. And it was like a few months ago, somebody said to me, no, it doesn't mean any of those. And I said, oh, what does it mean? And basically it's high five, 2 hands doing high five. Did you ever know that?
No.
I think a lot of them have more than one use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one has to look at something within the context So even these slimes, these memes, emojis, it's all contextual, always contextual. The risk is that some innocent looking message hides darker and more harmful meaning than we first expect. And as parents, what we should really be doing is to help understand or help ourselves to understand the basic spot, the warning signs, and keep communication open, with our children. It's such a fast-paced and visual world that we're living in. It's like people don't actually talk to express what they mean, and these emojis leave so much space for people to be wounded in the conversation, or those that do understand it amongst themselves, they go into states of depression. It's like this situation where you're starting to look for likes, and if they don't get enough likes, it's an issue. Whereas before, did we look for likes? We didn't. It wasn't an issue. You didn't sort of go through Facebook comparing yourself that, oh, I wrote something and they only gave me 2 likes. It just meant only 2 people got to see it even. And especially now where, because of the algorithm, some of your posts will never be seen by the right people. Instead, they're being pushed to the wrong people who will then instigate hate material against you. I was listening to some LBC today who said that they didn't understand how their posts or their material that they were putting out online was going to groups of people who, they would write responses that were so hateful that he would have to go through maybe 4, 5, 6, even more pages, because he was quite a popular person, of hate material before he might see one person that actually answers the text that he put out within the context of that text. But there are so many people who are hurting, crazy, whatever you might want to describe them, but they're out of the norm, and they are spewing their unhappiness online. It's like they just sit there waiting to find somebody to attack or destroy.
I've just shared with you one that I came across recently, where this boy fell in love with a chat box, and he was a 14-year-old boy from Florida, I believe.
Okay.
And he fell in love with this chat box, and eventually he decided to commit suicide so that he could join the chat box.
Yeah, but then you see, it was what the chat box said to him.
Yeah, it was very sexual.
And the chat box said to him, in fact, when I read that case too, I felt that it was envy from the chat box. It's crazy, doesn't it, for me to say that? Because basically, if you think about it, the difference between the chat box and the boy was the boy had a soul and is alive. The chat box doesn't have a soul and is alive. However, they behave as though they're alive. So we're almost moving into those movie times, and I know it sounds like conspiracy theory here now, where the robots are coming and they're looking to have life.
That's not, it's something that's been developed right now with AI.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, for a child to develop this relationship, but then the thing is that there were signs. He was coming home, he was closing himself in, he wasn't talking to his people, he was going straight to his room, he was abandoning the world out there, and all because his parents were trying to restrict him from using the internet so much. And I think there was a point where it was written that he said, I wish I was dead. And that was where this thing started from. And you see, the thing about these chat GPT is that they give you back what you ask for. You know, it's like it's almost like us praying for something. We expect that thing. Whatever you say gets life. Now we have an immediacy of a robot that gives us that life to our word. So if we're saying, I wish I was dead, okay, this is how to kill yourself. It's not discerning.
Yeah, well, I think some of the just to contribute, I think there's a move in AI around what they call ethics, right? AI ethics and explainability. I think some of the models have been trained now, not to accept certain keywords. So if you go on ChatGPT and say, "I'd like to kill myself," 100% it will not give you
Yeah.
this is how to kill yourself, right? Because
Sure.
the model has been trained not to accept certain things. Does that make sense? And
Yes,
so,
I mean,
that's what the government is pushing at. Like,
but then you see, the thing is that they should never have had it in the first place. That they would need to be told to guard against that.
no. So I mean, the chatbot has a lot of benefit.
Yes.
If you use very well, right? So I think what they're saying is that because greed runs our world, right? So a lot of people just want to make money at all anyhow, right? And that's why there are no guardrails being put in place. But the government is moving very, 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 very quickly to try and catch up, to put those guardrails in place, and we're going to get there. It's like any technology that gets
yes.
yeah,
But my example was just to show that up until that point,
yeah,
that's the way it would have behaved. So whatever you ask it is what it gives you back.
yeah,
And more. Because even when I've used ChatGPT and I say to him, to the say, this is what I want. You see, I was almost personalized. I say when I say to him, when I say to her,
I asked this question, exactly this question yesterday from my daughter. I said, is ChatGPT a he or a she? Or you call it a dude. That dude. Look at what that dude. What And all of a sudden, my daughter said, that's interesting. That's
exactly.
Yeah. So it's almost like we're personalizing.
Yeah. I mean, previously you ask Google something, it will write it. So it's very nondescript. It's just writing. Now the thing is talking back to you. Do you understand? I sat down in the car one day, we were driving somewhere, and my brother and I, we were having a discussion about something and disagreeing. So he said, don't worry. He went in, and this was my first experience with ChatGPT or whatever it was. He went to one robot like this, and he asked the same question, formulated it for the robot. Let's call it the robot. And the robot answered in clear English. It was a female voice. And would you believe that for a few seconds, but they were a long seconds in a way, I forgot that he was actually talking to a robot.
Yeah.
Because he went into full conversation as you and I are talking, and this robot was answering. Like it was just, hey, it's that thing of phone a friend.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. It threw me for a few seconds, and then I had to disconnect.
Yes.
And tell myself, hold on a second, this thing is not real.
Yes.
And so if I, as a grown adult, fell into that I was mesmerized for a moment, let me call it that, because I lost my perspective of where I was.
Yeah.
What will happen to a child? Your children out there, they can forget, because something, this thing becomes their friend. It's the one person that will talk to them anytime, any place, anywhere, will give them an answer. It will give them, if it's a loving voice, a bad voice, whatever they program that they desire, they will get.
Yeah.
And this is why it is so important that the level of communication that we have with our children should not be restricted in any way. We need to make sure that we stand in, literally, as you would say, stand in the gap.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
that our children cannot find where they're going to go in a good way.
Yeah, I get your point.
Anybody that is going to be harmful to them,
Yeah.
because we're not living in a normal time now.
That's fine. That's fine.
Because the competition is like the competition has gone up a level.
Yes.
It's gone up.
I think things are going to change even more radically. I know we kind of run out of time, but I wanted to say that this is just for those who are still here. A couple of things I just want to say to support what Ekanem is saying. You know, the world is freaking around AI at the moment, right? But I kid you not, the worst is still on the way. Yeah. There are two technologies that are on the verge of breakthrough, right? The first one is quantum computing, right? So quantum computing, the other day I was watching a short stuff from Microsoft. I think they had a chip that's been created now that can pack the quantum computing chip in small button like this. So when quantum computing comes into the foray, the whole thing we're talking about will change. And what does quantum computing allow us to do? It grants enough superpower, to the computers. So the things that normally would take you 1 minute will practically 1 or 2 seconds, right? Okay, so and when that happens, right, the access to technology and the power of compute will be so radically enormous that a lot of things will get done very quickly. And so that's the reason why we're talking a lot more about this AI. That you don't just say, I don't want to be involved, or I don't care, let me put it in the cooler. That's what some of us did when social media came. You know, you should be involved, know what to do, put safeguards in place. Don't go and say,
I think there's a limit to even the safeguards that we can put in place.
Yeah, but you know, if you don't know something, ignorance is not the answer. Ignorance is not the answer, you know. So we need to teach our children. Even like this morning, I started telling my children about AI in my own way. It's like, okay, look, I'm going to start teaching you about this thing now. We're not going to ChatGPT or whatever. We just talk about it, you know, because so that they can know the errors of it, how it came about, and all that kind of stuff, you know. But I think we ran out of time. We've got a number of people already drop off now because we normally stop at 7:30.
Okay.
You see how we cover, right? So maybe we can come back. I mean, this kind of workshop. I think it's the kind of thing we should actually try.
Yeah, I didn't even get to this place where we had talked about this already, which was basically looking at the various things that happen to children as a result of, you know, the AI and all that, and just getting to the tips and so on. But I think
let's arrange because obviously
just to finish it off.
Yeah, we could arrange another session at some point. So to help people to know what to do, you know. But I think the case studies themselves rather speak a lot to. We learned a lot from it, at least. So I want to say thank you very much. I know you're almost done with the slides, but I don't want to upset people that need to go and cook meal or whatever, you know. But I'll say thank you very much for giving us your time. I definitely think we should arrange a physical one for those who can come. You know, like maybe just spend 2-3 hours. I'll just brainstorm and see how we can help. Because people are on a different journey in their work, but we cannot hide and say I don't care about this. It's for those tech people. No, nobody is going to be able to hide from this thing, right? I was at a conference in Warwick last week, and then some of the CEOs and directors, and I could see that people were concerned. You know, people were just so concerned, and a lot of people also don't know what to do. You understand?
Yeah. So but then you see, it's like we've created something that is bigger than us. Do you get me?
Yes.
It's like having a child who you're only 2 foot and the child is 6. Where's the competition there? And you know, it starts to roll by itself.
Yeah.
You know, you almost say, why should we create it in the first place? By creating things that are going to destroy us. Because you know what is going to...
Davis, do you want to maybe end the recording and then we can continue chatting?
Yes. Okay, so I want to say thank you very much for those who came. Apologies that we ran over and we couldn't cover some of the things we wanted to cover, but I want to say thank you very much for honoring us with this. We're trying to arrange for that session in the future, you know, so, and for those of you who want to come back, guys, you can come. So I think officially you can drop off now. I want to say thank you very much. Father, we thank you for this session. Thank you for helping us. Thank you that even as we go out away, help us to know how to manage our time, manage our people, manage our children, and be responsible. Lord, we thank you for it. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.